Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're really going deep in the world of trauma and how it affects us.
Oh, wow.
Not just mentally, but like physically too.
Right.
And we're also going to explore the potential for healing.
Awesome.
You know, along the way, you've shared some incredible excerpts from
great.
The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk.
Awesome book.
And so let's jump right in. I gotta say, I'm really excited for this one.
Me too.
Bessel van der Kolk.
He's a bit of a rock star in the trauma world.
Definitely.
As a psychiatrist and researcher, he's spent decades working with veterans and trauma survivors.
Like really boots on the ground type of guy.
Absolutely.
So his insights are like
incredibly valuable.
Really valuable.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the book really emphasizes that trauma is way more than just like a bad experience.
Right.
It shakes you to your core.
Yeah, it's described as like unbearable and intolerable.
Yeah, and it's not just an individual thing.
Exactly.
Van der Kolk makes it clear that it ripples out,
it does.
affecting families and entire communities.
Absolutely.
That's a really powerful thought.
Yeah, and because trauma is so overwhelming, it's natural to try and like
push it away.
Yeah, push it down.
Pretend it never happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as we're going to see, the body has a way of remembering even when the mind tries to forget.
That's really scary.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets really mind-blowing for me. This whole idea that the body actually keeps the score.
It does.
Of these traumatic experiences.
Yes.
It's wild. There's this story about Van der Kolk working with Vietnam veterans at a VA hospital. Now, back then, trauma wasn't understood the way it is now.
Totally different.
And there weren't many, like, effective treatments.
Really? No.
So he noticed that these veterans were plagued by what he called these memories.
You know, and what's really groundbreaking is that Van der Kolk's work with veterans challenged the entire medical establishment.
Yeah.
It was a total game changer.
Yeah.
His observation that veterans suffered from these memories suggested that trauma wasn't just psychological. It was deeply rooted in the body, too.
Wow.
It wasn't just in their heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's this crazy anecdote about the Rorschach test.
The ink blot one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently when veterans were shown the second card, the one with color, it consistently triggered traumatic memories.
Isn't that wild?
It's wild.
Yeah.
So do you remember
the limbic system?
That part of the brain that controls emotions? Well, the amygdala is like the alarm system within that system.
It is.
Trauma can make it go
haywire. Yes, make it go haywire. Seeing danger everywhere.
Everywhere.
Even in harmless things like colors on a test.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like their brains got...
Yeah, their brains got stuck in danger mode.
Like they can't turn it off.
Yeah. Always on high alert.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Van der Kolk also talks about how unresolved trauma can lead to people repeating the same patterns and like finding it hard to learn from their experiences.
Yeah, and he's very careful to point out that these behaviors aren't character flaws. They're actually caused by changes in the brain.
Wow.
It's a critical distinction.
It is.
Because it moves away from blaming the victim and towards understanding the impact of trauma on our neurobiology.
So it's not their fault.
Not at all.
It's like their
internal wiring got...
Yeah, their internal wiring got messed up.
Messed up by the trauma.
Yeah, by the trauma.
Yeah.
So how do we even begin to untangle that? Like, where do we start?
Van der Kolk presents 3 main avenues for healing.
Okay.
Think of it like a staircase.
Okay.
You can start at the top with therapy and addressing the thoughts and feelings around trauma.
Yeah.
Or you can start at the bottom with physical experiences like yoga.
Oh, wow.
Working your way up to emotional processing.
I like that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he also discusses medication.
Yeah.
To help manage the symptoms.
Yeah.
So you're saying there's not a
one-size-fits-all.
One-size-fits-all approach. Got it.
Yeah, it's about tailoring the approach to the individual's needs and what works best for them.
So finding the right tools.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, the book also dives into this whole fight, flight, or freeze response.
Yes.
You know, how we react.
How we react when we feel threatened.
Yeah, when we feel threatened.
Yeah.
What really stood out to you?
You know, Van der Kolk emphasizes that chronic trauma especially often leads to immobilization and shutdown rather than panic or rage.
Yeah.
He's actually observed that paradoxically, traumatized individuals might actually feel more alive in dangerous situations than in safe, complex social settings.
That seems counterintuitive.
It does.
Right? Like, why would somebody...
Let somebody feel...
why would somebody feel more alive in danger?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
If your body has been constantly on high alert, it becomes accustomed to that level of stimulation.
Yeah.
Safe, everyday situations might actually feel boring or even unsettling.
Wow.
It's unsettling.
In comparison.
Wow.
So it's like they crave the adrenaline rush.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah,
they get used to that high level of, you know...
Intensity. That's a really powerful insight. It is. It makes you realize how deeply trauma can affect...
It affects everything.
Our perception of the world and even...
Our sense of self.
Our sense of self.
Yeah.
This brings us to another crucial aspect.
Yes.
Attachment.
Attachment.
The book talks about how our early childhood experiences, especially the quality of caregiving, can significantly impact our ability to...
It impacts our ability to regulate emotions and build healthy relationships.
Yeah, it's like our foundation.
It's like our foundation.
Yeah. Did you find that as fascinating as I did?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It all comes back to the development of secure attachment.
Okay.
You see, when a child has a consistent and attuned caregiver...
They develop a sense of safety and trust in the world. But when that secure base is missing, it can have... lifelong consequences.
This concept of attunement really resonated with me.
Attunement is so important.
Like a caregiver.
Yeah.
Being able to like read a child's cues and respond to their needs.
Yes.
Both physically and emotionally.
Yes. Attunement is like a dance between the caregiver and the child. Oh. The caregiver mirrors and validates the child's emotions, helping them make sense of their inner world.
Yeah.
It builds a foundation of trust and security.
But what happens when that attunement is missing?
Sadly, especially in situations of abuse or neglect, without that secure foundation. Children may struggle with things like controlling their emotions, making impulsive decisions, and forming healthy relationships later in life.
So even if they escape that traumatic environment.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
The effects linger.
The effects linger. And this ties back into the idea of the body keeping the score.
Yeah.
Early trauma can actually increase the likelihood of being re-traumatized later in life.
Oh, gosh.
The ACE study, which looked at adverse childhood experiences, found that women with a history of childhood abuse are more vulnerable to rape and domestic violence in adulthood.
That's heartbreaking.
It is.
It makes you wonder how many people are struggling with this and don't even realize.
it.
But the book does offer hope.
It does.
Right? Like there are ways to heal.
Healing is possible.
Okay, good.
And one of the key starting points is reestablishing ownership of the body and mind. Reclaiming a sense of safety and agency in the present moment.
There's this story in the book about Steve Gross.
Who worked with traumatized children. And he used something as simple as...
I love that.
A beach ball to engage with them.
That's great.
Just playing catch, creating this safe and non-threatening interaction.
Yes.
So simple.
That's such a great example.
Yeah.
Sometimes the simplest gestures can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It's about creating a space where connection and healing can begin.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if someone's struggling with this, where do they even begin?
Well,
Kolk breaks the recovery process down into 3 core components. Finding calmness, managing triggers, and living fully in the present.
Wow.
Each step takes dedicated work and can involve various therapeutic approaches.
And one of the things that he talks about is this power of language and expression.
He does.
How talking about trauma can be part of the healing process. Yeah.
He delves into the complexities of traumatic memory, drawing on the work of Pierre Janet, who differentiated between narrative memory and traumatic memory.
So Janet actually treated a young woman named Irene.
He did?
Who had nursed her mother.
Oh, wow.
Through a long illness when her mother died. Irene went into this state of denial.
Oh, no.
She was laughing at the funeral.
Oh, my God.
Trying to revive the body.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That case really shows how traumatic memory can work.
Wow.
It's not a neat linear narrative.
No.
Instead, it comes back in these fragmented bursts of sensations, images, and emotions that are hard to process or even put into words.
So it's
like the trauma shattered.
Yeah. It's like the trauma shattered.
It's a sense of reality.
Sense of reality.
Exactly.
And that's why just talking about trauma may not always be enough.
Always enough.
While it can help with processing and making sense of things, sometimes words just aren't enough to express how deep the wound goes.
So where do you go from there?
That's where we get into therapies that go beyond talk therapy, addressing the body and sensory experiences.
I see.
Kolk explores a whole range of approaches that acknowledge the body's crucial role in trauma and recovery.
Like what? Give me some examples.
One example is EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
How does that actually work?
It involves using rhythmic eye movements or other forms of bilateral stimulation. The idea is that these movements can help to reprocess those traumatic memories and reduce their emotional intensity.
So it's like calming the nervous system down.
You got it.
Helping the brain refile those memories in a less distressing way.
He even shares a personal anecdote about a patient named Maggie who had a profound experience with EMDR. She was able to access a traumatic memory from her childhood, but this time she observed it from her present-day perspective.
That's amazing.
It was like she was finally able to step outside of that traumatic experience and gain a sense of control.
It makes you realize that even though trauma can leave these deep scars, there's still hope.
There is.
For healing and finding peace.
Absolutely.
And besides EMDR.
Yeah, besides EMDR, he talks about the work of Peter Levine, who focuses on reclaiming physical sensations and regulating the nervous system. His approach emphasizes safely re-experiencing and releasing the trapped energy of trauma that's held in the body.
It's like it gets trapped in there.
It does.
Yeah, this brings us to another mind-bending concept, the divided self.
The divided self.
This idea that trauma can actually
split our sense of self.
Split our sense of self, creating
different parts.
Whole different emotions, memories, and even roles.
Yes. He explains Richard Schwartz's concept of internal family systems therapy, or IFS, which views the mind as a family with different parts. He uses the story of Joan, a woman overwhelmed by rapidly shifting emotions and behaviors after experiencing trauma.
Wow.
It highlights just how challenging it can be to feel like a whole person after going through something.
So shattering. It must be so confusing to feel like you have all these different internal voices.
It's like having all these different internal voices, each with its own agenda.
Yeah, with its own agenda.
And Schwartz identifies these parts as exiles, managers, and firefighters.
Wow.
Exiles are the wounded parts, holding the pain of the trauma. Managers try to keep those exiles hidden to maintain control, while firefighters jump in to extinguish,
to put out the fire,
overwhelming emotions, sometimes with impulsive behaviors.
Oh, wow. So how does IFS actually help?
It focuses on accessing a compassionate and observing self that can then interact with these different parts, fostering understanding, acceptance, and integration.
So it's like creating internal...
It's about creating internal...
harmony and wholeness.
Harmony and wholeness.
That's beautiful.
It is.
It's like learning to be.
Yes, it's like learning to be a compassionate leader for all the different parts of yourself.
Wow, so you're saying there's this potential for...
There is.
Growth and transformation, even within the pain of trauma.
Exactly. Trauma doesn't have to be the end of the story.
That's encouraging.
It's not.
Is there anything else that particularly struck you?
One thing that really grabbed my attention was his discussion of cutting-edge approaches like neurofeedback.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me.
I know.
I've heard a little about neurofeedback, but always wanted to know more.
Yeah.
What's the basic idea?
He explains how neurofeedback can help re-regulate brainwave patterns that have been disrupted by trauma.
So it's like rewiring the brain.
It's like rewiring the brain for resilience.
Wow.
He describes a patient named Michael who felt chronically unsafe.
Wow.
But after just one neurofeedback session, he experienced a profound shift.
Wow.
Feeling calm and relaxed for the first time in ages.
That's incredible.
It is.
So it's like the therapy?
Just like the therapy actually changed his brain activity.
His brain activity. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
They use a key EEG.
A quantitative electroencephalogram to pinpoint specific areas of dysregulation in the brain.
Okay.
And then the feedback helps the brain learn to self-regulate.
So it's like biofeedback for the brain.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And the research suggests that neurofeedback can significantly improve focus, emotional control, and even reduce PTSD symptoms.
That's really exciting.
It is.
It seems like there's so much potential for these kinds of innovative approaches.
There is.
So what else does van der Kolk explore?
He also looks at the power of rhythm and theater as therapeutic tools.
Interesting.
He talks about communal rhythms like singing or drumming and their ability to foster connection, expression, and a sense of belonging.
I've heard that drumming circles can be incredibly therapeutic.
Exactly.
Is that what he's talking about?
He shares this inspiring story.
Yeah, of Estonia's singing revolution, where communal singing actually became a catalyst for social change and resistance against Soviet occupation.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's amazing how collective rhythm can heal and empower entire communities.
That is amazing.
It is.
And what about theater?
Theater provides a safe space for trauma survivors to connect with their inner experiences, embody emotions, and find their voice.
Yeah.
He mentions Paul Griffin and his theater program for foster care children.
Yeah, why?
Noting how naturally these kids take to acting.
Yeah.
It's like they're able to express the unspeakable through a creative outlet.
It's like giving them a language beyond words.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It is.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in The Body Keeps the Score.
We have.
From defining trauma to exploring how it affects us to the diverse paths to healing.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It really has.
Yeah. Van der Kolk offers a profound understanding of how deeply trauma impacts us.
He does.
But he also leaves us with a sense of hope and possibility.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So healing is possible.
Healing is possible.
Okay.
And the more we understand about trauma,
the more we understand,
the better equipped we are to create a world where healing can flourish.
I like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of healing, there's so much more to unpack.
There is.
The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah, we've only just scratched the surface.
We've only just scratched the surface, so stay tuned for part 2, where we'll continue our deep dive into the incredible work of Bessel van der Kolk.
Okay.
See you then.
See you then. One of the things that really resonated with me was van der Kolk's call for a trauma-informed approach.
Yes.
Not just in therapy settings, but like in every aspect of society.
It's like shifting our whole mindset. Recognizing how widespread trauma is and how it can affect people's...
It affects everything.
Behavior, their reactions.
It does.
Even how they interact with others.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Van der Kolk argues that this shift is crucial for creating a more supportive and compassionate...
Yeah, a more compassionate world.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He talks about the incredible work of the National Child Traumatic Stress Network.
Yes. NCTSN.
NCTSN. They've been so...
Yeah, they've been instrumental
in developing and spreading effective treatments for children and teens who have experienced trauma.
It's really inspiring to see how they're building this network of support and resources.
You know, I was really struck by how they're pushing for a trauma-informed approach in schools, healthcare, the justice system.
Like all the places.
Basically any place.
Where people might be interacting.
Where people who've experienced trauma might interact with those systems.
Yeah, it makes so much sense.
It does.
When you think about it.
It does.
So they've outlined these, these core principles.
Core principles for a trauma-informed approach.
For a trauma-informed approach.
So it's about creating environments that feel
safe
building, trust encouraging collaboration, and empowering individuals with choice and control.
And it's a huge shift from asking what's wrong with you to what happened to you.
That's such a powerful reframing. Acknowledges
that people's behaviors often stem from their experiences.
Not some inherent flaw.
Yeah,
I'm curious, what are some examples of how this could actually play out?
Okay.
Say in a school setting.
So think about it this way.
Okay.
A child who's been through trauma might react very differently to things like loud noises or sudden changes in routine.
Yeah.
A trauma-informed approach would involve creating predictable routines, having clear expectations, and even teaching kids specific emotional regulation skills.
It's like building a safety net.
It is.
For those kids.
Yeah.
Helping them feel more secure and understood. That could make a world of difference.
It could.
Kolk also critiques some of the current systems we have in place, right?
He does.
He doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
He doesn't.
He points out the limitations of our current diagnostic systems, particularly the DSM.
The DSM.
When it comes to truly understanding the complexity of trauma. You mean the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders?
Exactly.
The one that clinicians use to diagnose mental health conditions?
He argues that the DSM, which relies heavily on these checklists of symptoms, often misses the deeper relational and developmental impacts. Trauma.
So it's like trying to squeeze...
It's like trying to squeeze a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah, square peg into a round hole.
Trauma doesn't always fit neatly into those predefined categories.
He even proposes an alternative diagnosis.
He does.
Developmental trauma disorder.
Developmental trauma disorder, which takes a more holistic view of how trauma affects children.
Okay, so he's really pushing for a more nuanced understanding.
Yes.
What's the difference between that?
Well, he points out that kids who have experienced chronic trauma often show a whole range of symptoms that don't necessarily line up with the existing DSM categories. They might be labeled with things like ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, or even bipolar disorder.
But what if those are actually rooted in their traumatic experiences?
Exactly. It's like we're misinterpreting the signals.
Misinterpreting the signals.
Their behavior is a language, but we're not understanding what they're trying to say.
And this misinterpretation.
This misinterpretation can lead to ineffective treatment. Developmental trauma disorder, on the other hand, looks at a much wider range of symptoms. Including emotional dysregulation, difficulty with relationships, and even a distorted sense of self.
So it seems like he's not just advocating for changes in diagnosis.
He's not.
But also in how we approach treatment.
Absolutely.
He criticizes the over-reliance on medication to manage symptoms.
He does.
Arguing that while medication can be helpful in some cases, it often fails to address the underlying issues. Driving the distress.
Yes, it's like putting a Band-Aid.
Yeah, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It might mask the symptoms for a while.
It might.
But it doesn't actually heal the injury.
It doesn't.
So what does he propose as an alternative?
Well, he's a huge advocate for therapies that incorporate the body. Like yoga, mindfulness, and other somatic approaches.
I've heard more and more about those types of therapies.
They're gaining popularity.
How do they actually work?
Well, they can help people reconnect with their bodies.
Okay.
Learn to regulate their nervous systems. And develop a sense of safety and groundedness. It's about addressing the physical and emotional impacts of trauma.
Simultaneously. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Trauma isn't just a mental thing.
It's not.
It affects us.
It affects us on every level.
On every level. One of the most encouraging aspects of the book is this emphasis on neuroplasticity.
Yes.
The brain's amazing ability. To heal and change. Even after experiencing
significant trauma. Yeah, that's so hopeful.
It is.
Kolk provides this roadmap to recovery.
He does.
Highlighting the importance of understanding how trauma affects us.
Yes.
Seeking the right therapeutic support.
Yes.
And actively engaging in practices that build resilience and well-being.
Absolutely.
So it's like he's saying, okay, this is what happened.
Yeah.
But here's how we can
move forward.
What personally resonated with you.
You know what really struck me?
Was this idea that healing from trauma isn't just about resolving the past. It's also about building a more fulfilling and meaningful present.
Oh, wow.
It's about reclaiming your life and learning to live fully in the moment.
That's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah, it's like trauma can steal our present.
It can.
Make us feel stuck.
Yes.
But healing is about reclaiming that present moment.
It is.
And choosing how we want to live.
Absolutely. And he talks a lot about the importance of connection.
He does. He highlights the critical role of relationships in providing support, validation, a sense of belonging.
Yeah, he believes that true healing often happens within the context of safe and supportive connections.
Yeah.
Whether it's with family, friends, therapists, or even support groups.
It's like that African proverb.
Yes.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I love that proverb.
We need each other to heal and thrive.
We do. And he talks about how creating trauma-informed communities is essential.
Yeah.
It's about fostering environments where people feel safe enough to share their experiences, seek help, and find understanding without judgment.
It's like creating a haven.
It is.
Where vulnerability is welcomed and celebrated.
It is.
Not shamed.
Not shamed. And he doesn't shy away. He's talking about acts of kindness.
No, he doesn't. He shared some really moving stories.
He does.
Of how even simple acts of compassion can make a huge difference in the lives of trauma survivors.
A huge difference.
It's a good reminder that we all have the power.
We do.
To make a positive impact.
It's like those ripples we were talking about earlier.
The ripple effect.
Kindness creates these ripples that can spread outward and touch countless lives.
But he goes beyond individual acts.
He does.
He talks about systemic change, right?
You're right. He advocates for changes in policies and practices that can truly support trauma survivors. He believes we need to move away from systems that punish and re-traumatize towards those that promote healing and restoration.
That's a powerful vision.
It is.
One area he focuses on is the criminal justice system.
Yes.
He argues that our current system, which relies so heavily on punishment, can actually re-traumatize people who've already experienced significant trauma.
Yes.
Often leading to a cycle of violence and incarceration.
It's like we're adding insult to injury. Instead of helping them heal, we're often pushing them
further into the darkness.
Further into the darkness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what does he suggest as an alternative?
Well, he's a strong advocate for restorative justice approaches, which focus on accountability, healing, and community restoration.
So it's more about addressing the root causes of crime, including trauma.
Yes.
And finding ways to repair the harm that's been done.
Exactly. It's about creating a more humane and just system.
Yeah, this call for a trauma-informed approach seems to extend to every aspect of society.
It does.
From healthcare to education to social services.
Every aspect.
It's like he's challenging us to fundamentally rethink how we approach caring for each other.
That's exactly what he's doing.
Wow.
He believes that by understanding the impact of trauma, we can create systems that are more compassionate, more effective, and ultimately more healing.
More healing for everyone.
For everyone. And he even talks about addressing the societal factors that contribute to trauma.
Like what kind of factors?
Things like poverty, racism, and discrimination.
It's like he's saying, let's stop putting Band-Aids.
Let's stop putting Band-Aids on the problem.
On the problem.
And start addressing the source.
Yeah, the source of the bleeding.
Of the bleeding.
We can't ignore the larger context.
We can't.
In which trauma occurs. There's this one passage in the book. Where he talks about how trauma can actually mess with our perception of time.
Yes.
I found that really fascinating.
He explains how trauma can make it incredibly difficult to be present in the moment. You might be stuck reliving the past, haunted by traumatic memories, or constantly anticipating future threats.
It's like our internal clock.
It's like our internal clock gets broken.
It's broken.
We lose that sense of flow and continuity.
Yeah.
And he connects this back to that fight, flight, freeze response we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
When we're in a state of trauma, our perception of time distorts.
It does.
It either speeds up or slows down dramatically.
Wow.
Making it hard to experience time in a linear way.
He talks about how some people with PTSD experience this time collapse.
Yes.
Where the past feels as real and immediate.
As real and immediate.
As the present.
As the present.
That's a powerful image.
It is.
It helps you understand.
It does.
Why it can be so hard for people with PTSD.
To move on.
To move on or feel safe.
Or feel safe.
In the present moment.
In the present moment.
So how do we help people regain that sense of groundedness?
Well, Kolk emphasizes the importance of mindfulness practices.
Okay.
And anything that cultivates present moment awareness.
Like what?
Meditation, yoga, even just doing things that bring you fully into the here and now.
Fully into the here and now. So it's like retraining the brain.
Exactly.
To experience time in a more linear and connected way.
And he also talks about the power of ritual and rhythm in helping to regulate the nervous system and create a sense of safety and predictability.
I've heard that drumming circles can be really powerful for that.
He gives that as an example.
Does he?
He says that drumming circles can create a sense of grounding connection and emotional release.
Wow.
It's about tapping into that healing power of rhythm and allowing the body to find its natural balance.
I love how the body keeps the score. Connects all these seemingly disparate elements.
It does.
The psychological, the biological, the social, even the spiritual.
It's a truly holistic view of trauma and healing.
It's a book that challenges us to expand our understanding.
It does.
Mental health. And create a world where everyone feels safe, supported, and empowered to heal. And he talks a lot about the importance of personal agency.
He does.
In that healing process, right?
It's not just about passively receiving treatment.
Right.
It's about actively participating.
In
your own recovery.
In your own recovery.
Yeah.
He encourages trauma survivors to find their voice.
Yes.
To share their stories.
Yeah.
And to advocate for their own needs.
It's about reclaiming a sense of power and control.
Exactly.
After experiencing something
that often leaves people feeling helpless and powerless.
Yeah, that's so important.
It is.
Reclaiming that agency. That belief that you have the power. To shape your own healing journey.
And he also challenges the traditional power dynamics in therapy. Does he?
He advocates for a more collaborative approach.
Okay.
Where the therapist and client work together as partners.
That makes so much sense. It's about recognizing the wisdom and resilience within each individual. And it aligns with his emphasis on choice and empowerment.
It does.
In trauma-informed care. It's about building therapeutic relationships that are based on
mutual respect,
trust, and shared decision-making.
And he also talks about the limitations of language when it comes to fully expressing the complexities of trauma.
I remember that he describes how traumatic memories are often stored in the body as sensations, images, and emotions.
They are.
That can be incredibly difficult to put into words.
Incredibly difficult.
It's like trying to describe a dream.
It is.
You can capture some of the essence.
Yeah.
But the full sensory experience remains elusive.
He brings back the work of Pierre Genet and the distinction between narrative memory or traumatic memory. Narrative memory is the story we tell ourselves about what happened.
Right.
While traumatic memory is more fragmented, sensory-based, and often nonverbal.
Yeah, he argues that traditional talk therapy sometimes falls short.
It does.
In addressing those nonverbal aspects of trauma.
Exactly.
It's like trying to describe the feeling of sunlight.
It is.
On your skin.
Yeah.
You can talk about it.
You can.
But you can't fully convey the sensation itself.
And this is where those body-based therapies we were discussing earlier come into play. Approaches like EMDR, somatic experiencing, and sensor-motor psychotherapy can help people access and process those nonverbal memories in a safe and effective way.
It's fascinating how he weaves all these different threads together.
He does.
The neuroscience of trauma, the power of the body, the importance of relationships.
And
the potential for healing and growth.
The
body keeps the score is such a rich and insightful exploration of trauma.
It's truly an integrative approach. It recognizes the multifaceted nature of trauma and acknowledges the many paths to recovery.
And most importantly, it offers hope. Not just for individual healing, but for creating a world. That is more understanding. Compassionate. And supportive of trauma survivors.
I think one of the most powerful takeaways from The Body Keeps the Score is this reminder that healing is possible. That even in the face of profound adversity, the human spirit has an incredible capacity for resilience and growth.
It's a message we all need to hear.
We do.
Trauma may leave its mark.
It may.
But it doesn't have to define us.
It doesn't.
There's always the possibility of healing.
There is.
Of finding meaning and purpose.
Yes.
And of living a full and vibrant life. But there's even more to explore.
There is.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll wrap up our deep dive.
We will.
Into the groundbreaking work of Bessel van der Kolk and The Body Keeps the Score. One of the things I appreciate most about The Body Keeps the Score is how it gives us a new language to talk about trauma.
Yeah, it moves beyond that traditional medical model that often focuses on symptoms and diagnoses.
Like instead
it invites us to look deeper, to explore how trauma truly impacts people's lives.
It's like he's saying, hey,
he is.
Let's stop trying to
put everyone in this little box.
Neat little boxes and actually try and understand their experiences.
Yeah, and that shift in perspective can make a world of difference.
It can.
And how we approach treatment, how we offer support, and even just how we interact.
Changes everything with people who've been through tough times.
Yeah.
One thing that really stayed with me was his discussion of how trauma can affect our
sense of self. Yeah.
You mean how it could lead to this
fragmented sense of identity where different parts of ourselves are holding on to different memories, emotions, and even beliefs.
Exactly. It's like we're not
one whole person anymore.
One whole person.
More like a collection of
like shattered pieces. And each piece is trying to
protect us.
Yeah, protect us.
In its own way.
And that fragmentation.
Yeah, the fragmentation can make it so hard. To feel safe. Connected or whole.
Yeah.
It can affect our relationships, our ability to regulate our emotions, and even how comfortable we feel in our own bodies.
He talks about how some people with trauma develop this kind of
protective shell
around themselves.
Keeping others at a distance so they don't get hurt again.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense.
It does.
If you've been deeply wounded.
Yeah, you want to protect yourself.
You want to further pain.
Yeah, you want to shield yourself from that.
But, as you can imagine, this self-protective stance can also lead to
isolation
and loneliness, which just adds to the burden of trauma.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle.
The more we isolate ourselves, the harder it is to connect with others.
Exactly.
Experience that healing power.
It's that healing power of relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's so crucial to create environments.
To create safe environments.
Where people feel
safe.
Safe enough.
Safe enough to let their guard down.
Yeah.
Share their experiences.
Yeah.
And receive support without judgment.
Yeah. And that requires a shift.
It does.
In how we
understand trauma.
We need to move away from.
Away from blame and shame. And
towards compassion.
Compassion and understanding. Yeah, he talks about
creating
trauma-sensitive spaces. Whether it's in therapy schools or even our own homes.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that people who have experienced trauma might have specific needs and sensitivities.
Yeah.
And then creating an environment where they feel safe and welcome.
It's also about being mindful of our own language and actions.
Absolutely.
Like we need to avoid saying things that might be triggering or dismissive.
Right.
Like, for example, instead of saying, just get over it,
right.
you could say,
I can see that you're really struggling.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do to help?
Exactly.
That simple shift in language can communicate so much empathy.
Empathy and understanding.
And understanding it shows that you're willing to listen.
Exactly.
Without judgment. He also talks about nonverbal cues, like
eye contact. Touch. Tone of voice.
Especially for people who have experienced trauma.
Especially
those subtle signals.
Yeah, those subtle signals can make a huge difference. They can convey safety or danger, even on a subconscious level.
So it's important to be really attuned to those nonverbal signals.
And use them.
And use them in a way that feels
respectful and supportive.
Sometimes it's just about slowing down.
Being more present.
In the interaction.
Yeah.
Or just offering a warm smile. Or a reassuring touch.
Yeah, those small gestures.
Those small gestures can go a long way
Yeah.
in creating a sense of safety and connection.
And he emphasizes this importance of patience and compassion.
Yes.
Throughout the healing process.
He does.
Healing from trauma.
It's a journey.
It's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
And it's not always a straight line.
There will be.
There will be ups and downs, setbacks and breakthroughs.
It's about creating a space.
It's about creating a space where people can move at their own pace.
And honor.
And honor their own unique journey.
Yeah, the research on neuroplasticity. The brain's ability. To change and heal.
Gives me so much.
It's so hopeful.
Yeah.
Even though trauma can have profound impact on the brain.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a life sentence.
It does.
That's what makes this whole field so exciting.
Yeah.
With the right support and the right tools, we can actually heal those wounds.
Feel those wounds.
And create new neural pathways.
Yeah.
Resilience, well-being, and connection.
He talks about engaging in activities that boost neuroplasticity.
He does.
Like mindfulness practices.
Mindfulness practices.
Yoga. Even just spending time.
Spending time in nature.
In nature. Those activities can help calm the nervous system.
Yeah.
Reduce stress.
Reduce stress.
And promote a sense of well-being.
Yeah, it's like creating fertile ground.
It's like creating fertile ground for healing to take root.
And it's not just about individual healing.
It's not. He challenges us to think bigger.
Yeah.
To create a more trauma-informed society.
As a whole.
As a whole.
So he wants us to look at our systems and institutions.
It does.
Schools, healthcare.
Criminal justice system.
The criminal justice system. Even our own families.
Even our own families.
And ask, how can we make these spaces more sensitive?
More sensitive to the needs.
To the needs of people who have experienced trauma.
That means educating ourselves about the impact of trauma.
Yeah.
Being mindful of how we communicate.
Right.
And advocating for policies that support healing and recovery.
Yeah, it's a tall order.
It is a tall order.
But it's essential if we want to create a world.
A world where everyone feels safe.
Where everyone feels safe, supported.
Supported and empowered to thrive.
I truly believe The Body Keeps the Score.
It's a must-read.
Is a must-read for anybody who wants to understand trauma and the potential for healing.
It's a powerful book.
It has the power to change how we see ourselves, how we interact with others, and how we create a more just and compassionate world.
As we wrap up our deep dive into The Body Keeps the Score, I'm left with this thought.
Okay.
What if we replace the question, what's wrong with you, with what happened to you?
That's such a powerful
question. It completely shifts the focus.
It does.
From judgment to curiosity and compassion.
Imagine the impact that simple shift.
I know. In our relationships, our communities.
On everything.
And even the world at large.
Yeah, it's something I encourage all of our listeners
I do too.
To reflect on as you continue to explore the impact of trauma. And the possibilities for healing.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
On this deep dive into The Body Keeps the Score.
It's been great.
We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
We do.
And remember, healing is always possible.
Healing is always possible.
And there is always hope.
And there is always hope.